I'm back with another interview. And guys, I told y'all last weekend was Dogman weekend. I was tired of talking about damn Dogman, right? So I'm happy to be talking about something else other than Dogman. You guys are trying to trap me in the Dogman trap, and I keep on breaking out of it, saying, get up off me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like Marshawn Lynch when it comes to the Dogman community. I'm running the ball, I'm running over, I'm jumping in the end zone, turning around backwards and grabbing myself, dancing into the end zone, because there's more to the paranormal field than just Dogman. Alright, so follow me as we go into some of these other things. We're going to start talking about ghosts, probably get into some demonic things. So if you haven't put on your armor, I would advise you to do it. Now, I'll probably go back and edit this and add a prayer for you guys in front of it, because I kind of got the feeling I'm going to get into some things that might spook you guys out. But with that being said, tonight I am joined by Jonathan Brown from Epoch Paranormal. We're going to get into some of these things. John, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm excellent. Thanks for asking.
Man, listen to that man voice. Y'all hear that voice? That is a voice of power. That's a voice. Watch, I'm telling you guys, when you hear that kind of voice, I know him. I got one like that, but I'm telling you, that's a booming voice, right? That's something to work with right there. John, let's start here, bro. You know, when I do these interviews, you know, I kind of like to figure out what brought people into the whole field that they're in, right? And I've discovered over all these interviews that there's two doorways that people come in. One is a doorway they come in as an adult, where they kind of like get interested in a topic, and then they study the topic, and then they make a decision that, okay, I'm going to be a guy who participates in this moving forward, right? Then the other door is, as a child, something goes on and they get exposed to or see or smell or touch or taste something that kind of opens their eyes at an early age. Which category do you fall in, and how did you get to this point to where you were in this?
I would have to say I'm probably somewhere in between. So just growing up, I always had a lot of friends who would bring up just paranormal things. Like I remember one friend saying when I was younger, well, my aunt's house is haunted, like the cabinets open, things like this happen. And everybody was responsible, was like, you know, I'm not trying to go over there. And here I was like, when can we stay tonight? Like, let's go. And then that interest was always there. I always felt like there was just something more to everything. And then growing up, like once I got into high school, I became pretty big, not so much on philosophy, but just intellectual thinking, like the construction of the mind, the construction of the soul, you know, what makes us us. And then as time went on, I stayed sort of close to that. You know, I did a little bit of Buddhism. I stayed in my religion. With, you know, my mother really hammered Christianity home to me, so I was always there. It was always by me. And then as time went on, the paranormal ended up sort of shifting into my thinking, because my original process was like, well, what is the construction of the human soul? You know, who are we? How do we operate? And then all of a sudden it was like, well, you have spirits there. It only makes some kind of sense that there is some separation from the physical and the mind, and that the soul has a bigger function. And then over time, you know, I would start watching some of the ghost hunting shows, but it was more like, well, here's your curiosity, because as a kid I would watch like Sightings, which would come on after X-Files. Well, that always piqued my curiosity. And as an adult, when money came into play and, you know, I was in the service, it was more like, well, let's go make this happen, because all those ghost hunting shows sort of bridged that gap between, well, I know these things exist, but now this is how you do it. And with the money I was getting from the service, that's how it started. So it was more of a internal thing that branched out into the world, because I've always really just felt 100% this isn't it. There's more to it.
Wow. So, all right, I'm going to pull out my shovel real quick. Forgive me. All right, so as I'm wondering if normally people, how to articulate this? Normally people who come into things like this at an early age or middle age, we're talking about from 5 years old or teenagers, they have gifts that have been given unto them from God. Some people have extreme discernment. Some people actually have the ability to hear spirits. It's a gift that they were given that ends up getting corrupted. Some people have the ability to see spirits. Have you noticed in your life that you had any gifting in that area that pertains to the paranormal outside of your phenomenal mind, which basically listening to you talk, I can tell the type of mind I'm speaking to. Outside of that mentality, because that mind comes from God as well, Would you
Hmm.
say that you've noticed that you have given any gifts at a young age?
That at a young age, nothing I could really pinpoint. I do know my mother has always said, and other members of my family said, I do have the gift of discernment. It has actually been like hereditary in our family. My grandmother did. I think some of my aunts did. But typically, when it came up, they would sort of push it aside because there was really no like a good way to identify it. Because if you put it in certain terms, it seems sort of out of there.
Yeah, absurd.
But
Yes.
but when you think about it in the aspect of discernment and things like that, it was very much a part of our lives. I don't have any experiences that I could look back on and say, okay, this definitely happened, or I remember this happening. But I do always remember having a high level of intuition
Hmm.
and being able to sort of see through some things. And the issue that I ran into is it's hard to bring up because if you don't understand the process and how it is and what it is in front of your face, it's hard to go and say, okay, this is what you were dealing with, to identify it. But as I got older and, speaking with my mother and some of my family and doing the reading that I did, I was sort of like, well, you've always had this there. And I know in some situations, I've seen like energy forms. And over time, it was very clear to me because, like, I don't know how to put it, but they would always look like free floating static with waves into it. I
Hmm.
describe it. I describe it to people as like if you see a heat wave and you see the shadow of it,
Hmm.
or you see it in the air, but it was just incredibly scrambled, like TV static, but to a finer degree. And then just I kept going from there. I mean, but as a child, my mother's never said, "Yeah, you saw this," or "You would talk about this." It's just always been like there. I don't know how to put it, but when you look at things and when I would analyze things, it was just like, "Yo, this is here. It's very much here." And so people be like, "Well, I don't believe in ghosts," and it was like, or I don't believe in spirits and afterlife. Look, they don't need you to believe in it. It's still there. And so it's just I don't know how to explain it. It's just always been a part of me.
No, you don't have to explain. I know exactly what you're saying. And that came to me while we were talking. It literally
Hmm.
was like, ask him this. It's like,
Yeah.
ask him this. And you know what it is, right? I told you this conversation was going to go how it was go,
Hmm.
but you know
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
is. I've learned this the hard way. So God gifts people with things at birth that
Hmm.
you grow into. When I was 18 years old, I was suicidal. I went to go kill myself. I told people the story
Hmm.
before. I went out to the wilderness to kill myself. And I challenged God. I said, God, if you love me and you care for me, I said, show me right now. Show me you're real. Show me you love me, or I'm going to blow my brains
Hmm.
out. And I was out in Bayou Savage. It was a still day. The wind started blowing. Waves started crashing on the lake in front of me. Trees were blowing to the point that where limbs were breaking. And I
Wow.
said, okay, so you're real and you love me enough to do this. What do you want me to do? And then I heard, pray for supernatural knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and I'll give
Hmm.
it to you. I didn't know what I was asking for when I got it, but I got it. And then
Yeah.
later on, I learned that not only did I have the extreme discernment of situations with people, but I had knowledge, wisdom, and understanding beyond my years to the point to where only thing I could do with it was become a political consultant because I would sit there and look at a
Hmm.
problem and be like, okay, bro, listen, this is what the solution is. That's how I ended up being an engineer because I would just sit there and be like, okay, this is the problem. This is how you do it. We got to do a little math. This is an equation. All right, cool. You know what I'm saying? Differential
Hmm.
equations, whatever. I don't give a damn. You know what I'm saying? We can do
Yeah.
differential equations. It's all right there in front of me. And so, bro, I'm going to tell you this at the start because you need to know this. The
Hmm.
reason why you ended up in those circles, in those environments that you were in with the people that you were kind of working with is because they knew what you are and you have way more gifts than you probably have even tapped into and discovered. So
That's very interesting because
yes.
I've always found myself around that particular type of person
Hmm.
and group. So.
Because that particular type of group of people, again, they have things that scan that spiritual environment and they say, wait,
Hmm.
this is power, but he don't know the power. And so we're gonna tap
Yes.
into it and we're gonna use it for our benefit. And it's like two sides of a coin, a head and a tail. You given that gift, you can choose how you're gonna use it. You
Yeah.
choose you can choose most people, and I'm gonna stop talking after this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna get back to the interview, but I really want to talk to this brother. There's, you know, these things. So there's natural law, which are books are written on natural law, and then there's spiritual law. We're given a choice. You can be a spiritual man and live a spiritual life where you're in partnership with the spirit realm to live the best life you can live and try not to make as many mistakes, or you can live the life of a natural man. A natural man goes through these cycles of creation and destruction throughout their whole life. They, for example, they have a problem like with money. They'll get some money, they'll overspend, and then they'll go broke. Then they'll 3 years later they'll get money, overspend, and go broke. 3 years later they get money, overspend, finally learn the lesson, and then kind of take off a little bit, and then they crash again. And it's kind of like this. It's like a upward channel on a stock graph, like a ascending channel, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I know I can talk to you like this. You understand these things. Up, down,
Yes,
up,
I
down,
do.
up, down, and then you know that breakout pattern breaks down, and then it starts all over. That's how their life is. People who understand how to program in the spirit realm through God, I do it through Jesus Christ in partnership. You have that same ascending channel, and it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, and every now and then it breaks down, but you know why it's broken down, and you're told why it's broken down, and then you go into a higher ascending channel in your life, if that makes sense. All right, that's enough of that. I'm sorry, I just wanted to get that out and tell that to you.
No, it makes perfect sense. I've
Um,
brought that up to friends about how we live our lives. So
awesome sauce. All right, so we got you at this age where you're starting to see things, you're starting to understand things, you start to make you some bread through the service. Thank you for your service.
no.
And now you get into doing paranormal investigations. All right, you take your money, you start doing paranormal investigations. All right, bring me back to your very first paranormal investigation, bro. Bring me back
All
through
right.
the emotions, the feelings, the thoughts. I'll tell you about mine afterwards, but like, bro,
Yeah.
it takes some balls to do that. It really does.
So I was out in Omaha, Nebraska. We were stationed at Offutt Air Force Base, and I was with my buddy Cody. And I said, look, I bought the recorder. I still use the same recorder to this day, but I got the digital recorder. Let's go find something. So we go out to this old farmland, and we're walking around the farmland. I'm trying to do EVP sessions. The speed up. I get back home that night, and I catch this EVP that says, knock it off. And so I sit there in disbelief. I'm like, what's going on? So we continue to go back, and this is when things get crazy. For our first investigation, there was this old farmhouse on the land that was abandoned but in good condition, and people started breaking into it. People always vandalizing something. I don't understand it, but we take it as an opportunity and say, let's go up in here and see. It's got to be connected. And so we start going into this house, running our EVP sessions. And I don't know what we walked into. We had to walk into one of the most haunted houses in the world. So we had multiple encounters in there. The one I remember is I got this EVP, and we're upstairs in the room, and it sounds like somebody's walking up the steps. And next thing you know, you hear this man saying, hit that, hit that, hit that, just like that. And I go home and I'm reviewing it. I'm like, Cody, bro, like, it's got to be a bum in there. It's bums living in there. So we go back and we check it over. Nothing is there. And so we're sitting upstairs up in the first floor, or not the first floor, the second floor landing. And we always did our EVP sessions with the lights off. And my buddy flicks his flashlight on. He's like, man, I just saw a shadow pop up between us. And I didn't believe him, because like the place is creepy. We didn't know what we was doing. We was out there just doing our thing. And he says a shadow popped up. And I believe him to this day, because he never turned a flashlight back off ever again. I tried to get him to turn it off. I said, yeah, turn it off, man, turn it off. Man, it had to be 3 seconds later, flashlight back on. And he was native, indigenous American. So he was very much like in tune with that. And he wasn't playing. And so we stopped going because we got into some legal issues. That's going to happen, unfortunately. But as a result of that place, like, I was at home in my dorm, because our first 2-3 years in the service, you got to stay in the dorms unless you're married. And I'm laying in bed, and for some reason, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I look down at the edge of my bed, and it's like a mid 20-year-old man in old farmer's clothing with a dirty white shirt, dirty overalls, just staring at me. And I remember looking at him because I wasn't startled, because it was like in that moment, all the information downloaded. This dude is from the farm. He want me to stop coming to the farm. He tired of it. And he had followed me back home. And I say it to this day because it wasn't like a hypnagogic hallucination. It just wasn't. I remember seeing a dude, he had mask to him. He was opaque. He was staring me dead in the face. And like my bed was shaking the room. I would hear voices talking inside the room. And then my buddy Cody even called me up because he lived in an apartment at the time. He was out the dorms talking about, yo, Brown, like a white shadow form just came through my door. And for our first investigation, a lot of that stuff that happened was like, it was either waiting for me or we just moved somewhere I had never been. And then just the nervousness, and then having that thing come home with us or come home to see me, that was legitimately my first investigation where I went out there and was trying to do something with it. And it was just, I learned a lot from it.
Oh yeah, you a savage. You a pure savage, bro. I'd have been like grand opening, grand closing. I ain't going out here in these streets doing that. But bro, you came to my house. I'm done. Yeah, you a savage, dude. So off rip, that's how you was getting down. Yeah, you a pure savage.
I kept getting into it. Like I kept analyzing EVP more. Like they even started calling me the Ghost Whisperer in the dorms, and I said, well, that ain't a fitting title. Like I'm just doing me. But like, it was insane what was happening. Like, I just would never have thought anything like that. So yeah.
Nah, bro, that's cool, man. That's awesome sauce, bro. All right, so let's go into something now, ladies and gentlemen. I know every time I touch on race, bro, because we're in an environment where people get into they get so caught up in their feelings. But I like to point these things out because there's these cultural differences. That people don't understand that we as black men go through when we do this. And I don't mean it as no victimhood shit. It's just like we go through things. How has it been the reception for you when people realize that you're a brother and you go out there messing around with ghosts? How's that turned out for you?
I know. I know here a lot of people be like, man, what the hell you doing? I got a friend and she got, she white and she got some other black friends, and they was like, oh, he's black and he owns ghosts. He said, man, we don't do that. What are you talking about? We don't want no ghost. And she tries to explain it to him, and I'm like, that's just where my process is taking me. And then like, I have my aunt. My aunt is very open also, and she's really into this. She's on my YouTube channel a lot, making comments. She's very supportive of it, and like she's interested in it because she's seen things. Like my grandparents' home, they have a story where they were all in the front room. It was her, my cousin, and my cousin's kids. And they said, she told me this because this is crazy to me. Like a black shadow figure ran down the steps, hopped over the kids, and then ran into the basement. And they told me, they was so scared they left the kids in there because the kids were asleep. They didn't know what happened. They all ran out the house and then want nothing to do with it. So in terms of my family, between our very strong religious background and just our beliefs in these things, I've been blessed there because they've been very supportive. And when I need help, they provide me with like either, just open-minded help or very religious help. Like my mother has been a rock. And she told me when I first started this, she was mad. She said, I didn't want you doing any of that. I didn't want you talking to them spirits. But when we speak and the things that I do, she makes me understand that some of the free thought that I have all pertains to our religious background. It's all in there. And so that's been a blessing. But, I used to work at Ethicon, and there was a lot of engineers there. And I would get a lot of pushback from it because there are, I knew all the engineers in there. I wanted to know who they were, and I would come to them with my theories and my ideas. I'd be like, well, how can I make this device? Help me do this. And typically I get positive reception. But for the most part, there's a lot of resistance. The issue is the resistance that I get doesn't speak up. It's and then they turn their back and they run their mouths because word gets around, But overall, it's been different depending. I mean, some typically, I don't see any other brothers or sisters out there investigating. So it's usually depending on who I meet. I've ran into some situations where the people I was investigating with, I came to find out that they did not like black folk, but for what I was giving and the work that I was doing, it became not so much a non-issue, but it was like, okay. And I hope I turned their hearts some. It's not my job to do that, but I'm gonna be me. And running into those kinds of things, that's just how life goes. Sometimes it's unfortunate, but for the most part, I've been blessed by a very good group of friends to do this with. So
No, that's what it takes, bro. It takes that in order to actually work in this field. It takes all kind of people for you to have relationships with all kinds of people.
hmm
But I know every time I talk about this, people have a conniption fit. It's like, oh, I'm tired of hearing about race, but people need to understand there are cultural differences in
yeah,
how people interact. And for me, like my dad, like I told you, my dad was just here,
yeah,
which is why we started late. So we're sitting here talking, and I said, well, I got an interview coming up soon, and he says, well, man, you're a classically trained engineer. He's like, I don't understand why you're around here messing with this ghost,
hmm
demon, devil stuff. And I said, well, Pops, I said, I help a lot of people this way. And I
yeah,
said, one day I'm gonna let you talk to some of these people. And I said, you'll understand it. And so he's sitting there quietly for a second, and then he says, I don't think I need to talk to nobody. He said, I get what you're
hmm
saying. And he was like, that's in your blood. He was like, it's all good. He was like, it's cool. But bro, when my pops first heard about this, he was like, yo, you lost your damn mind. He was like,
yep,
son,
yep,
you way too smart. You this, you that, you bada bing, bada boom. He's like, you way too smart. And I was like, yo, just chill, relax, man.
yeah,
But he's seen some of the versions of me as a man, and he'll sit there and say, well, man, you used to own 40 properties, you used to own this, you used to own that. Oh, I
hmm,
still own a lot of stuff, Pops. It's just this is what I do differently.
yeah,
And but it's not as easily accepted, and I'm pretty sure that's for anybody in this field.
hmm.
But boy, when you start talking about the black community overall, they look at you like you completely lost. You got three heads when you talk about this kind of stuff. It's,
And
it's insane.
I really would love to see them branch out and then just start thinking about it because they'll find because a lot of us have a very strong religious background, but they'll find that a lot of the things we read in the text and that we talk about, they it ain't just words. It's not just what you dealing with on a day to day basis. It goes deeper, and these things are around here. These things affect everybody, and I will say from what I've done and speaking with my family and speaking with my mom and my aunts and my uncles and just my friends, I have a better connection to my religious faith because I mean it's deep. I can't really put into words right now, but it's so deep, and it's like you don't have to get committed to it, but at least hear somebody out. Hear me talk about it to you because the things that you go about in this life, when you read and people telling you how to deal with the things that may affect you and cause you to do things, man, there's spirits out there that's always trying to get at you. And it's just I don't know how to put it, man, but it's been a blessing to really understand this part of it. And it's not just out talking to ghosts or doing the paranormal. No, it's deeper. It's so much deeper than that.
No, it's way deeper than that, bro. And there's the men, the men that I've discovered that are analytically minded, like a guy who can
hmm
sit there and solve a complicated mathematical equation.
hmm
It takes, in order for them to truly understand the spirit realm, there's a guy named David that's going to be working with us soon. Same type of guy
hmm
as us. Super duper smart, super duper
hmm
successful, super duper analytical. But it took for David to have spiritual encounters on levels that are so superseding the encounters that the average person had in order
hmm
for it to penetrate that mind, the analytical mind. It's like you have to peel all these layers away from the
Yeah.
analytical mind in order for you to get down to it. But that process of peeling things away makes that person's faith and their ability so strong because they know they take the analytical portion, they apply it, and then they have the spiritual portion applied, and then wham, they are a powerhouse. Like David
Hmm.
is a powerhouse. You know, when I talk to him, like it's off the chain. But nonetheless, that's how it goes. All right, we're
Yeah,
moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. This has turned out to be one hell of a conversation. I'm enjoying this conversation, man. I really am.
me too.
All right, so let's talk about my audience loves encounters, right? You gave us one spooky thing that happened
Hmm.
to you. What's this? Was that the? Now that was the first thing. What was the most frightening thing that's happened to you since you've been doing this? And it doesn't have to be a ghost. Just the thing that was like, hold on, bro, this is too much.
I would have to say it was at the old pharmacy. We had talked about this previously. This is what made me stop doing heavy dabbling and any kind of psychic or mediumship stuff. Um, I had did some training with a guy I was working with, and just like we had spoken before, he said, "Well, you really have it. You need to go." And I said, "Okay." And we went into this old pharmacy. We didn't go. Let me get this correctly. My buddy, this psychic medium who I'm good friends with, he's very experienced. I watched him sort of bud into what he is now. And then another guy, Victor, like Peruta, who has been doing this for God knows how long. They all went into this old pharmacy and did a walkthrough with my other buddy. And then what happened was a week or two later, they opened the place back up to us. They weren't there, but I came in and did the work. And I told myself, well, let me go see what I can do with this. Let me go, because I'm very heavy into EVP work. And, I don't use a lot of gadgets, but I go in there and I say, okay, I'm going to do the walkthrough. And I'm walking through this place and I'm picking up on like child spirits that are talking. Um, I encountered a man who, this is the first time I'd ever seen this, but this isn't even like the height of the investigation. I see this man and I'm speaking to him and we're talking and I'm trying to figure out who he is, and he gets tired of me and he starts to like elongate his body to try to intimidate me. And this is at the point where I'm like, well, is this just my imagination or am I really processing something? But he starts to elongate his body to intimidate me. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm done talking to you. And so I go upstairs and I'm sitting in this upstairs room. Now, this is all on the channel. There's a condensed version and a longer version. But I'm sitting in this room and I'm like trying to connect with these children that might be there. And suddenly I'm like, well, something's coming up behind me. And I turn around and I'm like, well, you're creepy. Like, you are incredibly creepy. Like, what are you? Because I wasn't identifying it as a human or, spirit. It felt conscious in its interaction and its intention with me, because it was like it knew I was there. It came up behind me, wanted to know who I was, and it wanted to interact with me, but there was nothing there. So I finish up that portion of the investigation and I say, okay, well, I got to go down to the cellar now, or the basement. So I get down to the basement and I'm walking down into the basement and I'm like, well, this basement feels unusual. I've been in a lot of basements with my paranormal stuff and they all have a vibe. But this basement, I'm telling you, the vibe was just an outlier, way out in left field. And I'm like, well, I'm creeped out. I said, this is a creepy basement. So I go further into the basement. And so I hit like this open room. It's all dark down there. And I turn around and I'm like, something is down here. I feel it, because a lot of what I pick up on is like energetic stuff. I won't necessarily see or feel something, but I've always been like able to feel the vibe. And so this energy just comes down on me. And all of a sudden I go from like 0 to 100 with just anxiety and just general creepiness. And I'm looking and I'm like, what are you? What the hell is down here? And so there's this brick wall and I'm looking at this brick wall, and we spoke about it earlier, how sometimes I can see energy forms.
Mm-hmm.
And behind this brick wall, I see something peeking out. And mind you, I'm in darkness for the most part. And I'm like, what is that? And it's flowing back and forth looking at me. And I'm like, what in the Lord's name is that? I'm like, what are you? Like, I'm just I'm overwhelmed. And I'm trying to hold it together. I'm like, okay, just finish this, get what you can. And I'm like, I had to leave. So I'm walking past. I'm like, you're right here. What the hell is right here? What are you? And I'm like, I don't even want to turn my back. And I'm like, well, look, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm done. So I go upstairs and I literally have to take 10, 15 minutes to myself to breathe. And then I leave. And this is over in Lebanon, Ohio. I leave and I go over to the local restaurant, which is sort of like my getaway. Whenever I come there, I go and have a drink and I chill. And I'm sitting up there at the bar and it feels like the weight of this thing is still around me. I'm in the middle of the bar and I know me. One of my big things is you have to know who you are. You have to know your vibe, your center. And I'm off kilter. I can tell this thing is either around me or like residually speaking, that energy is still there. And so I call up my buddy, Gary, who had already been there. And I'm like, and I start tallying off everything I'm picking up there for validation purposes. And then I'm like, and I go in the basement and there's this energy there I had never in my life encountered. And he's like, oh yeah, when we were there, when Victor and I were there, we picked up on this thing and it was something down there that was ancient and something that can travel over the whole area, had been there since the area was there. Excuse me, I got a little cough. Something that had been there since the area was there. And I'm like, okay, so yeah, we picked up on all the same stuff. And then like a little while later, I get this video from my buddy. Say, yeah, here's the video of their walkthrough. They're talking about this thing had been there for thousands of years. It comes by selectively because it travels the area. It's almost like of an elemental property. Every feeling that I picked up 2-3 weeks before I got there, they said, this is what you'll feel if you encounter it. This is what it is. It only comes out if it takes interest in somebody, or if there's somebody's there that's like, oh, who is this? And the first thing that comes to mind is like, why the hell didn't y'all tell me that? Why did no one come and say, hey, John, you going up in there? This is what you might run into. Be careful. No, and I was like, in one instance, I was like, well, that's great. I picked up some things. But on the second, I'm like, yo, that's not a feeling I want to really have again. Like, I didn't go back into the basement at all. I was done with the basement. And we've even went back to that place, and it's like a very nice shop now. I went into the basement recently with my buddy. But even then, it was like, I'm taking 2 steps for every one. And like, we down there looking around. Nothing was down there when we went back. So whatever I ran into was exactly what they ran into. And it just left, like, till this day, I sometimes think about it. And I'm like, and they're like, well, should we go back in there and investigate? I'm like, man, I ain't never going back in there investigating. And I went in there one time and the manager or the assistant manager was working. And I said, yo, like, are you experiencing anything here still? And she told me, we feel stuff upstairs. Nobody really likes going upstairs. Nothing in the basement. And I told her straight up, I said, look, if you don't feel anything and you just get slight creeps, I said, never let anybody come back up in here to investigate the paranormal. I said, you bless this place. You keep it positive. You keep it clean. But under no circumstances do people come back in here to investigate the paranormal. I said, you don't want to kick anything up. And I said, you keep this place where it is, because there is nothing in here that is so extreme that you need to have investigators in here. And every once in a while, I go back and I talk to her. Like, I've had friends bring it up. Let's go back and investigate that place. I'm like, nah, you let it lie asleep. And because whatever's down there, you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to mess with the stuff upstairs, because the EVPs and everything I got were so strong. And I have theories about this, but I think they were so strong and the things were so active in there because you have this thing that was residing in the basement, or at least on the proximity, that sort of just magnified everything. Like, nah, don't go back up in there. It's straight.
Bro, it's wild you say that, because you know the description that they gave you was the description of what's called a territorial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a spirit over a territory. And that's one of the most powerful things you can ever run into. It will manifest itself as a person. It'll manifest. It'll change and morph itself to whatever it is, whatever it wants. Um,
Hmm.
and what most people don't understand about territorial spirits is that that spirit has dominion over that area. So when you go into that area, you're going into its domain, and it has complete and utter control over that area in which it roams, right? And
Yes.
so if the person that's quote unquote investigating is not careful, they'll have huge problems. For
Hmm.
I gotta ask you a very personal question. When you were a kid,
Hmm.
were you baptized in church?
I don't think so. I got to talk to my mother about that actually.
Bro, this is very important. This is
Hmm.
extremely important. Ask your mother if you were baptized as a kid, if you went and you were christened or anything like that,
Hmm.
because what most people don't understand is based on spiritual laws of dominion and territories.
Hmm.
There's certain places the best way to explain this. There's certain places I won't go because it's a violation of certain things territory. I'll give you a
Hmm.
perfect example. I didn't know this until later on, but I when we had the Comic Con down here, me, Dave Schrader, a whole bunch of people were hanging out. We went to Bloody Mary's Voodoo House, right?
Hmm.
It's on Rampart Street down here. We go to do this investigation. When I walk up to the door, we beat her there, so we're all waiting on her to get here. She's a voodoo priestess, the real deal, like
Hmm.
real deal voodoo. And she opens the door. Everybody goes in, and something's telling me you can't go in here, but I go in anyway. Go in.
Yeah.
They start doing stuff, doing EVPs. I'm not really with all that. They start doing. I'm like, nah, I'm just chilling. I'm more so hanging out for the networking thing. She says she's not getting what she wants. She goes to the back. She does a ritual, opens the way for the spirits to come
Ooh.
in. She does that.
Yeah.
We go back inside. All this crazy stuff starts happening. Now it's happening to other people. It's not really happening to me. But I'm sitting there on the side. I'm getting sleepy. I'm getting hungry. I'm like, I'm ready to get the hell up out of here.
Hmm.
And when I'm leaving, I say, look, somebody let me out the door. I'm about to go home. Bro, I leave, get out the front door, go into my car. I look back, and there's this giant shadow standing in the window, just looking
Ooh.
at me. And I'm like, okay, what is that? Later on, I learned that it was nothing but pure mercy and grace from God that protected me. But later on, I learned that that thing had perfect dominion in that space. That space was an altar to that spirit.
Hmm.
It's called Mama Nu. It was an altar to Mama Nu, which is a river
Ooh.
spirit. It was an altar
Yeah.
to Mama Nu. I, as a Christian, entered into that altar unauthorized. That spirit had every right to kill me, do whatever the hell it wanted to do to me, because
Hmm.
I went unauthorized into that environment. And I've talked to plenty of people who are ghost hunters, Bigfoot investigators, that are Christians and believe in God and believe in Jesus Christ. Well, God is an office, so people will say they believe in God. And I always
Hmm.
tell them, you need to clarify, you need to understand what office you're talking about of God, because God can be anything. But nonetheless, I
Hmm.
talk to guys who profess Jesus Christ, and they'll say they go into the woods, they get sick, they get dizzy, their stomach start hurting, this happens, boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, yo, you're going into the environment unauthorized. I say, you have not got the authorization and the protection to go where you're going. You need to pray before you go and make sure you are authorized from God to go into that environment with his protection, and you'll be fine. God does it. Just recently, we talked.
Hmm.
He went back out there on a Bigfoot investigation, and he calls me back. He says, James, I caught some of the best evidence I've ever caught in my life on this investigation. I didn't feel sick. I didn't have this. I didn't have this. I didn't have this. But man, these things came out, and I captured them. And I'm like, what you gonna do with it? He's like, I haven't decided yet. I think I'm gonna do a documentary and try and sell it to Amazon. I said, well, congratulations. And he was like,
Yeah.
bro, what you said was true. I said, I know what I'm saying is true because that's the spiritual aspect of man that you need to understand. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention so you understand that if at some point in time, if you profess Christ, if you went to church with your parents and
Hmm.
you was baptized, bro, understand that you are an enemy combatant going into an environment where they have the right to take your life. And it's not, and it ain't like, oh, they might. No, they will take your life. And that's why you see, like, people in the paranormal field, you'll see men in the paranormal field who are Christians, they'll die of cancer. You'll see people in the paranormal
Hmm.
field who've been doing investigations and they'll get sick. And, people are like, well, such and such had, breast cancer. This person had this
Hmm.
cancer. They had that cancer. And nobody really explains that to people. They don't break it down to them and say, yo, homie, you walking off into some stuff that you don't have authority to be in because you're not right and you haven't done what you're supposed to do. So I just wanted to make sure that I disclose that to you and tell you, so you might want to have those conversations just to make sure
So
um, you cover your behind.
that's interesting to me because I had always heard about the Native American approach. Like anytime I would go on certain Native indigenous lands, I would always ask permission from the guardian spirits that were there. I would bring like a an offering, tobacco, like a
Mm-hmm.
personal item that I gave to them, like flowers and things like that. I do the same things with cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
And then to put it in that aspect of just, dealing with this territorial spirit, no one had ever said anything to me related to that. Now, I had some theories, like what sometimes when I'll go on investigations, I'll tell people, it does, genius Loki. I don't feel like that may qualify as one, but like, that's a whole nother topic. But like, I tell people a lot of times, look, if you go to a site and you're not getting activity the way you want to, I said the site may have an echelon system. I said there may be a governing spirit over the site. I said try and reach out to the governing spirit and ask for permission and then see if that opens up communication, because everything that might be here may not have anything to say to you because something is telling it you ain't got anything to say to them until I say. But this, what you're talking about, seems like it's to a way more severe degree than just something holding dominion over a site necessarily to me. So that's something I had never considered. That's something I'll be thinking about.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that, um, and I can say this confidently, bro, because this. Remember, I was telling you about encounters and experiences that
Yeah.
people have. Like my faith in God is based on and built on encounters and experiences with things that I don't even talk about. Like things,
Hmm.
the small stuff that I disclose publicly. Like people freak out when I tell them the minute things. And these are the lessons that I've learned from being in this, because that's the level of stuff that's come after me, and literally come after me physically, emotionally, family wise. I mean, bro, I remember one time, and I figured out what did this. There was a time period, bro, where I did nothing but piss blood, like
Damn.
piss blood. I would
Yeah.
go to the bathroom, piss blood, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" Go to the doctors, nothing's wrong. Go to the doctor again, nothing wrong, bro. 3 days pass, go piss his blood. What the hell is this? And I
Yeah.
didn't figure out what it was until I started praying. And when I started praying, I started getting revelations. Then people started coming to my life. Hey, you need to understand, James, this. Well, where do I go to
Hmm.
understand that? How do I do it? Go read this. And then read this as according to scripture. And then read this. And I was like, holy crap. You mean to tell me that it had the right to do this to me because of because of a situation? Yes. I'll tell you another story. There was this lady called me, bro. John, this was the craziest thing ever. She calls me, I'm
Hmm.
in Dallas, and I told people this story. I never told them how and why this worked. She calls me, I'm in Dallas, I'm at Dallas Cigar Bar on Greenville, smoking a cigar. She calls, we talk. She's talking about this spirit that's in partnership with her family. Now I know that the family had a covenant with this spirit that made them prosper, right? She was
Yeah.
the one in the family that was breaking the covenant. So she was the one that didn't want to be in partner with the spirit. So because she didn't want to do what the spirit told her to do, it was constantly punishing her. Everything she get a new car, the car would, the engine would go out. She get a new house, the house would catch on fire. She get a new job, she get fired in a month. Like she was constantly getting hammered, right? And so I'm just talking to the lady, trying to comfort her, and she breaks down crying on the phone, gives me the worst encounter I've ever heard.
Hmm.
Talks about how she was physically violated by this thing. And I'm sitting there. We take a break because she's crying. And I say, okay, let's take a break so you can get it together. I'm going to go get something to eat. We're going to get back on the phone. We get back on the phone. As soon as I start eating, now I know it was Raul Kakodesh, the Holy Spirit. It says, listen,
Hmm.
get off the phone with this woman. Stop eating. Start drinking. You're going to choke. Bro, I listened. Thank God I listened. Get off the
Yeah.
phone with her. Start drinking water. Immediately my throat closes up, like I'm having an allergic reaction. Throat
Yeah.
starts to close. I can't breathe. I start drinking the water. I'm coughing. And finally I start to be able to breathe. And I'm like, oh, I ain't talking to this broad no more. This broad got some next level stuff on.
Yeah.
Go home. That night, I'm laying in bed with my old lady. Something sticks his finger in my mouth. I bite down on it. It tastes like dirt and pennies. I
Hmm.
wake up. I'm scared out of my mind. Go back to sleep. It sticks his finger in my nose. And this is how long it goes. It goes through my nasal passage, down into my throat, all the way down to the base of my, like, to the base of my throat. And I
It's like
feel
a
it,
COVID test.
yeah, like a COVID test. It's scratching. And I reach
Yeah.
up and I grab this hand and open my eyes and I see this hand disappear while I'm holding it. Bro, I get up scared out of
Wow.
my mind. I go outside, and the only thing I knew to do at that point in time was like to put on a preacher. I knew I needed something from God, so I just went outside and I put on somebody preaching. And I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
this is crazy, right? Fast forward, turns out that that spirit was one of the spirits that caused me to have this urinating blood.
Hmm.
Because by legal grounds, legal basis, it was an illegal agreement with that family, and I was coming into that legal agreement unauthorized to deal with it and basically button its business. And when I found that out, I was like, holy crap. So I went and dealt with it later. You know what I'm saying? I dealt with it the proper way, and I don't have no,
Yeah.
it ain't got no issues with me because I know how to deal with those things now. But that's how that's how critical this stuff is, and people don't understand it because nobody ever talks to them about it like this. And I'm talking about I've done 200 and no, it's probably 332 interviews at this point in time. It's 290, between 290 and 330 is in that range. It's more
Yeah.
closer to 330. And bro, nobody talks about this stuff because they take it all at surface level. So when we talk about territorial spirits, when you and
Hmm.
I talk about going to a location, coming in agreement, the minute you go to a location that you know is haunted, that you know is occupied by spirits, you already have authorized that thing to do whatever the hell you want to do to you. Unless you've covered yourself in the blood of Jesus, you already authorized it because you came in agreement with the location because you knew where you were going in the beginning. So it would, by the time you get there, it already like, oh, here comes this clown. Let me go ahead and do what I'm gonna do. Oh, we're gonna talk until it's his little microphone for a little while, and then we're gonna follow. It's behind home, and we're gonna torture him. You know what I'm saying? And that's what ends up happening, bro. And they enjoy it. They love it. They get a kick out of it. They get a thrill out of it because they want to live again. And um, and then you find people who get their life goes to hell. I mean, go straight to hell because they're playing around and they don't know what they're playing around with. All right. So we talked
That's
about your. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's sort of, I learned a lot right there because when you talk about stuff like that and you talk about the experiences you had, I've had the same experiences and now they make sense because there's been multiple times where I've gone into these investigations and they always say, well, ground yourself and protect yourself before you go in. And I'm always like, man, I don't know what Crystal's going to do. But going into these people's houses, dealing with the different spirits they have, and then bringing some things home because I brought something home a couple months ago that made me stop. I was like, I'm good for a while. And like it was up in the house and it startled my son. My son got scared. The dogs start barking at the walls. And first thing I did, Mom, come over here. We got some blessing to do. And we blessed the house. I mean, I smudged the house. I don't know how much that does, but I smudged the house and we blessed it together and nothing ever happened again. But it was just from going to an investigation. And what you talking about, and then the the different physical and mental ailments that come on people from investigating. I tell people all the time, you keep doing it, it's gonna play the long game with you. It's gonna mess you up. You got these serious depression problems and things like that. Like you carrying things, and it's like when you talk about that and you put it in those terms, it's a sort of it's an eye opener to me. So I appreciate that.
No, it's all good. It's just you got to be mindful, bro. You got to be
Yeah.
extremely mindful. I'll tell you another story about smudging.
Hmm.
Um, these kids out of Oklahoma. This happened 3 months ago.
Yeah.
They run into my homie D Doss. D Doss is working at a cigar shop. Come in, the guy's asking for sage. He's like, I need to buy some sage. I want to burn sage in the house and clean the house and blah blah. D says, well,
Hmm.
what's going on in the house? They start to explain that there's spirits that are in the house that do things like they're sitting at the dinner table eating dinner, and somebody will get up and go get water, and they'll take the plate that was at the table and throw it against the wall, food on it, and everything.
Wow. Wow.
It would take knives out of the drawer. Literally, see a drawer open up, a knife come up, levitate, go up into the air, slam into the middle of the table. Right? Crazy
That
stuff.
sounded wrong.
Oh no, crazy, crazy, real deal stuff going
Yeah.
on. And I talk to these people, and you know the panic in a person's voice. You know
Hmm.
something's going on because certain levels of fear you can't fake, right? So he tells them, "Hey, bro, don't take that sage out there because that sage is gonna quiet it down for a little while, but
Hmm.
it's gonna make it worse. Now we're gonna do this, blah 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 blah." Sure enough, they take the sage, go out there, they do it, things quiet down. 2 days later, it comes back 3 times worse. Come back, and they're like, "Well, why is it getting worse?" He says, "Because one of you guys let it in, and one of you guys are in agreement with it." They call us. Me and him are on the phone one night. It's like 12:30. They call him because he's the person that they're talking to, and he's counseling them. He brings them on three-way with me, and I'm listening to them. And they're saying, "We're standing at the window, and we see this thing with green eyes in the driveway, and it's four of them."
Hmm.
One of them says, "Wait, it's getting taller, it's getting bigger." Now it's two guys, two girls. You hear the girls freaking out, cursing, screaming, going
Yeah.
crazy, right? And the guy says, "It's more of them coming." And so he starts to describe little short shadows with green eyes. So we sitting there listening. I know what it is. D knows what it is. Um, and he says, "Listen, I'm gonna come over there." And they was like, "What?" He said, "I'm gonna come over there." So you hear him leave work, get in the car, drive, and he's still talking. Drive over there, pull up in the driveway, and they come out to meet him. Then he hangs up the phone, right? So I go into prayer, praying, sending angels, sending everything to strengthen him and refresh him and do everything he needs to do because he's dealing with the real deal. Native American spirits, they're on Native American land, spirits that have
Mm.
not only authority on that land because it's in Oklahoma, then the U.S. government gave a huge portion of Oklahoma back to the Native American tribes, which gave them authority over even more larger swaths of land, which gave
Yeah.
those spirits that they're in partnership with their spirits more authority. And then the people in the house gave it authority to come in and out of the house. So you walking into a situation where this thing is in complete and total control. And and he calls me back like 30 minutes later, and he said, "We get ready to do a Bible study. I want you on the phone with me." I'm like, "All right, cool." So he's explaining to them dominion, authority, explaining to the men whose house is this, whose name is on the lease. It was two girls on the lease, one guy. He says, "Okay, you're the male in this equation. You're the guy who has the authority. You're the one that is going to target." And he says, "You know what? It's been doing all these things coming after me. Yeah, you're the guy. You're the authority. It's going to challenge your authority." So going back and forth, and I'm explaining to him, bada bing, bada boom. Bro, it stops for about a week.
Yeah.
And they invite this girl over to hang out. And they see it out on the peripherals because there was a hedge of protection prayed around the house. They see it out on the peripheral. It cannot come beyond this hedge, but it's all around the hedge, just moving around like whatever. But it's
Hmm.
respecting the hedge, right? This girl comes over that one of their friends and says, "I'm not afraid of that. Let it come over here. It could come over here if it want to."
Oh
Boy,
man.
that thing shoot through there and come straight in the house. Pew! And because he didn't say, "Hey, shut your behind up. You don't have the right to say that," and because he kept his mouth closed, wham! It all started all over again. And we talking to him again, explaining to him, "Bro, this is what you did wrong. This is this. First of all, you shouldn't have had to brought over there. You don't, she around there acting crazy. Second of all, you supposed to take authority. You let somebody else come into your household, take authority, and you didn't do nothing about it. Bro, you just negated your authority over to this person." And it got to the point, bro, to where it was so bad that he just broke the lease and moved out. Moved
Wow.
away. Moved a state away, and his life is fantastic. Bro, those girls stayed there with the other guy. To the point, it got so bad, it got to the point to where one of the girls got deathly ill, and then they had to move out. Turns out the whole neighborhood had the same problem. It was about 6 to 8 houses in the cul-de-sac. The whole neighborhood was having the exact same problem.
I've
Imagine.
heard of that before too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But it's those things that people don't understand on how the spirit realm works that allows negative and bad things to happen to them. I'm doing way more talking than I want to do. All right, let's circle back and get out of me. Let me stop
I'm
talking.
looking
Let's get back to you.
at. Yeah.
Um. All right. Have you ever been in a situation where you're doing an investigation and you saw some weird eye shine in the darkness? Have you ever found anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't experienced that.
Okay, well, that's cool. What about things touching you, grabbing you while you're on an investigation? Anybody on your team ever experienced that?
I'm trying to think back on that. I've actually been grabbed. No, I don't know. So I get skeptical when it comes to touching. I've actually had 3 experiences when I think about it. So yes, I've had that happen. I've had it happen in 2 of my homes. One of them I thought was a friend of mine who had passed away from an overdose because I moved into a house in the same neighborhood where we all used to chill at, and
Mm-hmm.
his parents' home was right up the street. Like I could see it from my place. And then the place I moved in was just right there, and like I felt something touch me on the back once going down the steps, and that was the way he used to poke me, like, "Hey, what's up, Brown?" And then the other situation was from a really bad hitchhiker case we had when I lived up with a buddy of mine. We had something crazy in our house. And I was asleep one night and I woke up and I was like sleeping on my hands, like belly down.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew something was next to me. And then something right by me pressed down on my bed, like right by me. And I just sort of froze. And that was real. That was crazy. And then the other one was we were in this place up in Lebanon, Ohio, the Glendower Mansion. And we walked into this room that was like supposed to be the old children's room. As soon as I walked in, I told my buddy, like, yo, I don't feel comfortable in here. It's weird in here. And we went into this back room and I was telling him, I said, I don't really think something wants me in here. And then my whole right arm started burning. And it felt like a bad reaction. Like the whole arm was burning. And my buddy was like, man, that's what happened to me the one time I got touched. I started burning and these scratches appeared. But no scratches ever appeared. The burning just persisted. And he was telling me, like, something touched you. And me being like the skeptical side of me was like, man, now you tripping. Like, it's just burning. But I really feel now 100% that something had touched me there. And I mean, that's on one of my videos too. Under the Glendower Mansion. That was the most recent time I had ever been touched. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. That's that touching is some next level stuff, and the other thing that's next level and terrifying is that getting in the bed with you. That getting in the bed with you, bro, is some stuff that I don't wish that on my worst enemy, bro. Something crawling into the bed with you, bro. No, no, no,
I'm,
no,
I'm, I'm
no.
telling you, because
That there, bro.
my girl was over. I didn't even wake her up. I didn't even nudge her. But that whole house in itself, it stemmed from us going to investigate at Post-Town Elementary. And my buddy said it started with him where he was hearing something in his head say demon a bunch. And then, like, for me, the incidents that happened, I was upstairs because this is when I was working at Wright Patterson. I was working thirds. And I was up at night playing like Skyrim or something. I was chilling. And all of a sudden, because I was living in the attic, all of a sudden from the back part of the attic, you hear this girl say, help me. And when she said it, I sort of paused, like, damn. And I turned and I said, I cannot help you. I said, you are not welcome here and you need to leave. You have no reason to be here. Go. And then I sort of went back to what I was doing. And then there was another night where I woke up and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and at the top of the stairway, because I used to cleanse and bless the place, it was something at the end of the stairway and it felt like such malice. Like it wanted to kill me. It wanted to hurt me. And I'm sitting up there and it's like an energy form. And I'm looking and I'm like, what is that? And I said, I'm not going towards it. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to look at it. And it just stayed there. It wouldn't come any further. It would not come any further. And then the last one was I was sleeping and you felt the hand or something pressed down right next to me. And I was like, man, this is over. Like, and then my buddy was dealing with the same kind of torment. And we didn't even talk about it till like the last year or two that it matched up so well. So it's just craziness.
Yeah, bro. That dude. That's it. Bro. That's how it goes, my man. And unfortunately, when as I talk to witnesses, bro, and I've documented this, but I haven't gotten to the point where I want to talk about like the spirits yet, as opposed to the
Hmm.
cryptids. But when you document the commonalities between the sleep paralysis, things crawling in
Hmm.
the bed, the touching on the spine, which makes it feels like you get this chill, like this vibrating sensation up and down your spine, like somebody like literally grabbed your spine and shook it.
Wow.
The voices that people hear in their head, where it's not outside of their head, it's in their head, where something's like something's throwing thoughts inside of their head.
Hmm.
When you start to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, you understand, or I understand, that when the Bible talks about demons, that is 120% real, because the things that these creatures or these entities are capable of doing go beyond the boundaries of what people will call just a spirit or a ghost, right? It goes
Yeah.
into things that physically cause problems, physically manifest and touch you, physically cause like cancers and mental illnesses and things of that nature. And it's this field that I tell people all the time, this is probably the most dangerous field that someone can work in. It's the equivalent of the most dangerous profession that any person can physically work in, like with their hands. Like it's the equivalent of building a skyscraper in the 1930s, where you were up on top of a metal beams 200 feet in the air with a rope
Hmm.
attached to you in case you fall. That's the equivalent of it. The danger in this job, and most people go into this as a hobby. I consider it a job and I treat it like a job. Most people go into it as a hobby, not understanding it. That's how dangerous this hobby is, because they don't get that everything that's programmed in the spirit realm manifests in the physical realm. So
Hmm.
you just running around dabbling in the spirit world, opening yourself up to all kind of things, not even understanding the repercussions and ramifications in the physical realm. And people get mollywopped. They get mollywopped, and by the time it happens, it's too late. They don't understand it. You see them aging at
Yeah.
extremely fast rates. In my case, what it's done to me is it made my hair gray extremely fast.
Hmm.
I didn't have an age, but it made my hair gray like ridiculously fast. But other people, you see it physically manifesting as them aging, drug addictions, mental health issues, all kinds of things, because they don't know and understand what they've gotten themselves into.
And it's interesting just to interject. I've said it on my Twitter multiple times, and I tell people all the times. Like you see a lot of YouTubers go out there because they're watching these TV shows and things like that, and they're doing videos of cemeteries or where have you every month, twice a month, once a week. Sometimes every other day, and I'm like, you guys don't realize the harm you're putting yourself in. To consistently go out there day after day, months after month, to go to these places where people have done nothing but invite just demons and spirits in that are looking for an easy meal. They're looking for somebody that they can attach to. And you guys are there every day and you're producing these things, but you're doing so much harm to yourself. And you think it's nothing because it's not physically showing up on you. But you're getting these mental illnesses, you're getting these sicknesses, and a lot of these things are a result of it. But if you go to modern medicine, they're going to tell you, no, this is why you got it. This is what's going on. But like you say, the things that form in the spiritual world and manifest in the physical, when you go to these people who deal strictly with the physical, they have no idea, and they won't even accept the presumption that spiritual leads to physical. So all you're doing is getting diagnosed for something, and they're telling you, well, this is why. But in reality, you're weakening yourself. You're weakening sort of your constitution by going to these places and interacting with spirits all the time like it's nothing. It is something, and it will really hurt you if you're not careful.
Nah, I can't agree with you any more than that. All right, final question, because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
EVPs. What would you say was the scariest EVP that you've ever recorded while you were out there messing around with the recorders?
Man, that's hard because I've caught quite a bit of EVPs. Um, I would say there's one that I got from the Dwight L. Barnes building up in Kettering, Ohio, that wasn't necessarily scary, but it says something it's pretty clear to me, but it says, why would they leave us like this? And it was more of the fact that to me it was a conscious spirit, or maybe a community of spirits that felt like they were left. That they have some kind of idea that, hey, we're stuck here, nobody's helping us. And it just makes me think more about what's really going on. Are their spirits really trapped here? Are they in some kind of state of purgatory? Are they feeling like they're left somewhere? Because Dwight L. Barnes was like, a bunch of their students went off to World War I or World War II. There's a memorial up. Maybe they came back to the school and like a bunch of them are in there. And it just makes me think, is there something more we could be doing? It's not necessarily scary to me, but it evokes the emotion of compassion. And it's difficult because I can't subdue the compassion. I can't, and I want to help them. I want to pray for them. I want them to have that second chance to be reconnected, to pass on. And so when I get EVPs like that, it just sort of drives me, but it makes me quite sad. But in terms of EVP, I mean, I've got quite a few that spook me out. Typically the ones I can't understand, but are very clear. I wonder sometimes, like there was an EVP once I got, and that one of the mediums came by and said, there's a demon down there and I have a clear EVP. And I'm like, well, I'm not playing that EVP again. I sort of put those to the side. And I worry that if I play them at home, they might allow access to my home. But to answer that question, I really will have to go through my EVPs. But the ones that invoke a feeling of compassion and sort of send me down the spiral of thought to try and figure out how to help them are the ones that bug me the most.
Nah, that's really profound, bro. That's extremely profound, because that there is that there puts you in a bit of a conundrum. I'm not going to expand or expound on it, but it puts you in a bit of a conundrum, because definitely it pulls on the heartstrings, and that pulls on the heartstrings, and it's unique. I'll put it to you like this: it's a unique way to get you to engage and opening yourself up to something. That's all I'm gonna say. That's a very unique way to appeal to human nature, to get you to engage in a conversation with something and try and do something.
Well, it's funny, if real quick, like some of the reading I've done, they say when you're dealing with these demonic, some of these malevolent entities, they want you to continue to speak to them. And so they'll lie and they'll say things, but they say typically if you're dealing with some kind of a human spirit, they'll do one of two things. They'll ask for your help, and they'll ask for you to pray for them. And outside of that, any additional communication typically isn't going to happen. And I've brought it up with some friends who do a lot of EVP work, and it was more like, more often than not, we're communicating with a bunch of things we shouldn't even be touching. So those things are, I'm telling you, we could talk for another 3 hours. So
oh bro, I know. Well, man, listen, I really appreciate you taking time and joining me, and also I just appreciate the conversation that we had prior to this. It was refreshing, and I really do appreciate it. Let's go into this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have Jonathan give you guys how to get in contact with him. In this audience, there's a significant amount of you guys that have encounters that I don't really go into. You guys know I focus on cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman, unknown things. When I talk to people about the spiritual aspect of things, it's more of me consulting them and helping them. But if you have an encounter, this will be the perfect person to share it with. So he can help grow his channel, number one, give him another form of content that he can produce outside of just the video investigations. And number two, straightforward dude that I think you can trust. So tell everybody where they can find you and how they can get in contact with you.
Well, I'm on YouTube at Epoch Paranormal. You can't miss it. And then I'm also on Twitter under Epoch Paranormal or Joseph Sturgill. And then you can also find me on Facebook. Currently, I'm not an active member with a Facebook page, but Epoch Paranormal is still up there, and I am quick to reply to most messages to my Epoch Paranormal Facebook page.
Awesome sauce. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only James Williams, Dog Waters. You're swimming in the dog waters with me, and as you know, guys, when we start talking about things, we really go deep. That's why you love me. That's why I love you. Peace out. Y'all have a good night.